Hey everyone, Pete here again with another exciting installment in the speech series. I'm going to be talking today about the benefits of becoming certified in CPR and the benefits of knowing CPR in general. A couple years ago, a guy was in attendance at a football game. It was Michigan against Notre Dame. He was with his sons. He went into cardiac arrest, and nobody around him knew what to do except for one young gentleman who stepped up and performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation and was able to circulate that blood in his system to his brain until the paramedics got there and they took him to the hospital. And miraculously, he was able to watch the end of that football game from his hospital bed in the hospital later that day. This is a miracle. This isn't something that usually happens, but it is a testament to how critical cardiopulmonary resuscitation, those chest compressions, can be. This man most certainly would have lost his life if nobody were to have been around to perform compressions on him. So it just goes to show how important it is to know CPR and to be correctly certified in CPR. Like I said, my name's Pete. I've been an EMT with a private ambulance company for about 2 years now, and I also volunteer with a fire and life safety education program in Mesa, Arizona. We go around and we talk about life safety initiatives and building codes. We do daycare inspections. We generally just like to make sure the city is being as safe as they can around the water and in terms of smoke alarms and, you guessed it, CPR. So we have a major issue with victims of cardiac arrest not receiving the proper pre-hospital care that they need. Nobody thinks they're going to be in a situation where they'll need to perform CPR, but it happens more often than people may think, and it's everyone's responsibility to act accordingly if that situation ever does present itself and they ever are put in that situation. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between cardiac arrest and a heart attack. A lot of people use those terms interchangeably. They think they're the same thing, but they are in fact very, very different. A heart attack is the heart not getting enough blood and or oxygen. This can mean pain. It can lead to a cardiac arrest, but what a cardiac arrest is when the heart just completely shuts down. During a heart attack, the heart is still pumping. It's not pumping as much as it should be, but it is still pumping. It is still functioning. So don't go up to somebody that's having a heart attack and start performing compressions on them. Another reason why becoming certified is incredibly important, knowing the difference between the two and knowing when it's appropriate to start pounding on someone's chest. So about 350,000 people every year in the United States alone goes into cardiac arrest, and that's just outside of the hospital. And cardiac arrests are in fact the leading cause of death in the United States. That's over accidents and drownings and all other fatal injuries that people sustain. 90% of those 350,000 people that experience a cardiac arrest unfortunately pass away from their injuries. I think it's largely due to the fact that only 46% of those 350,000 receive the proper pre-hospital care. Only 46% of those cardiac arrests happened while somebody was there to be able to perform CPR. And if we get more people certified, we get people knowing how to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation the correct way, we can greatly reduce those numbers and we can get it down to hopefully one day to a place where only a small percentage of people pass away from cardiac arrest, or at least we get them to the hospital in order for a physician to work on them and do what they need to do. One of the major elements of cardiopulmonary resuscitation that allows victims of cardiac arrest to survive long enough is defibrillation. And I know that not everyone has access to a defibrillator, but a lot of cardiac arrests happen in major assembly places like sports arenas or churches or other events where there is a defibrillator available. And the more people that take CPR, the more people will know how to use it, the more people will know that it's there, and hopefully more lives that can be saved. So a lot of people come up to me and tell me while I teach class, I am a certified CPR instructor. I've taught a few classes, and a lot of people say, well, I have my card from 6 years ago. I still know how to do it. Do I really need to take this class? I tell them, well, yes, because the medical field changes very, very rapidly. Scientists are constantly trying to figure out the best ways to handle situations like cardiac arrest, and I feel like they come out with a new way to keep people alive longer every week. So the standard operating procedures of CPR changes. Some scientists now believe that continuous chest compressions are more beneficial to a victim of cardiac arrest than the ratio of compressions and rescue breathing. Certification is also very important. There was a 16-year-old girl in England who was swimming in a swimming pool with a lifeguard present, and that lifeguard was CPR certified. Her certification had expired. We'll get to that later. And she went into cardiac arrest. And this lifeguard, the first time she'd ever performed CPR, she went up to her and she started performing chest compressions. And the victim of cardiac arrest started taking what's called agonal respirations, which is just a reflex that the brain creates to try to get more oxygen, but it doesn't signify a response of spontaneous breathing. So she stopped CPR. She didn't bother to check for a pulse. She didn't really bother to check if she kept breathing. She saw some breaths and stopped, and when the paramedics got there, they asked her why she stopped, and she said, well, she started breathing. And the paramedics had to explain to her that in order to stop CPR, spontaneous respiration has to return, and the victim has to have a pulse. So if this lifeguard were to have recertified, maybe that information would have still have been fresh in her mind, and maybe she wouldn't have forgotten to check for a pulse, and that victim might still be alive. So in closing, a couple main points that I talked about. CPR is incredibly beneficial. I talked about how many people go into cardiac arrest every year, 350,000 people in the United States alone. And I also mentioned that only 46% of those people get the pre-hospital care they need, which leads to 90% of those cardiac arrests unfortunately passing away. CPR should be learned by everyone. The Center for Disease Control estimates that rapid intervention and defibrillation with cardiopulmonary resuscitation can double, if not triple, a victim of cardiac arrest chances for making it to the hospital and allowing them to be seen by a physician. Also, I talked about being certified a long time ago and how necessary it is to recertify and make sure that you're continuing your education, continuing your training in CPR to make sure you're provided with the correct information so that you can go out and act accordingly if you're ever faced with that situation. Thank you all very much for listening to me talk at you for 8 minutes. I look forward to the next speech, and I hope you all learned a little something. Thanks. Have a good one.